Enneagram 101. I'm actually super excited. Okay, I'm going to set the stage. I'm going to set the stage the same. By the way, this is repeat for some of you. I'm sorry. I'm going to set the stage. There is like a spiritual foundation for why we want to talk about Enneagram. There was a talk given a while back. I can't remember her name, but she gave a great talk, and it was about seeing each other deeply. And I think this is a really good phrase. We want to see each other deeply. If you want to go to the Bible and find sort of a biblical basis for this, Paul talked about the discernment of spirits. And what some of the Enneagram teachers argue is that by understanding the Enneagram, you can actually discern the spirit or the energy of the people you're around. Or in other words, you can see them more deeply. I do want to say at the outset, first off, I'm not an expert on any of the psychological personality types or tests like Myers-Briggs. I'm aware that there is some overlap between Myers-Briggs and Enneagram, but all of the Enneagram teachers agree there is a very fundamental difference. Most of the psychology typing systems are mostly outlining and naming attributes and sort of, this is how you behave, this is how you act. But the Enneagram is kind of trying to go to somewhere else. We're not trying to talk about attributes or behaviors. We're trying to talk about underlying energies. And the way that I think about this is there is an energy that we all put into the world. There's an energy that we happily receive. And there are also energies that we kind of repel and don't like to embrace. So the Enneagram is really about like fundamental energies. And that's what you want to focus on is it's about understanding energies, but then those energies will manifest through certain attributes. So when we get into the numbers, I'm going to talk about attributes and we can ask questions, but I'm going to talk about attributes, but I want you to remind yourselves, but it's not about those attributes. It's not about behaviors. It's not about tendencies or proclivities. It's about underlying energy that then will manifest through those channels. Okay. So the Enneagram asserts that there are 9 fundamental energy types. And those 9 fundamental energy types are put into triads. And we kind of have to start with the triads. So so lump them into 3. And at the top of the circle, I wish I had a whiteboard, but at the top of the circle will be the number 9. And on either side of the number 9, so imagine start with number 9, going clockwise, then you would get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 9 at the top, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's no number at the very bottom. At the very bottom, it's blank. And on either sides of that will be 4 and 5. So the biggest gap in the actual geometry of the Enneagram is between 4 and 5 at the bottom. 9 at the top, going clockwise, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Gap at the bottom between 4 and 5, intentionally, to show that the biggest gap between the different energies is between the 4 and the 5. Okay, the triads. At the top, you have 9 in the center point, 8 on one side, and 1 on the other side. That is called the gut or the body triad. The next triad is 2, 3, 4, 3 in the middle, 2 above it, 4 beneath it. 2, 3, 4 is the heart triad. You're going to see why this is important in just a second. Like the triads really, really matter. The next triad is 5, 6, 7, 6 in the middle, 5 below it, 7 above it. 5, 6, 7 triad is known as the head triad. The reason the triads matter is because it tells you fundamentally where those people experience the world. So the gut or the body triad, which is the 8, 9, 1 at the top of the Enneagram, they experience reality primarily through the body. The best description of this I've ever heard is Richard Rohr, who is a self-proclaimed 1 and one of the experts on the Enneagram. Richard Rohr said, what you have to understand about the body triad is we experience the world as a full body shockwave. When people says something to us, when something happens, whether it's an event or an experience, it comes at us through the entire body, head to toe. So the way he described it is for people in that triad, often they experience reality as a series or a barrage of full body shockwaves. Okay, so they're experiencing the world through the body. One of the things I'm going to do as we go through this is I'm going to talk about, okay, what's your center point? What's the part where you experience the world? So what's kind of the entry point for experiences and words? So for the body types, it's through the body. But the other thing we're going to talk about as we go through the Enneagram is we're going to talk about compulsions, fundamental needs, cardinal sins. Help me remember to come back to this. Compulsions, fundamental needs, cardinal sins. I want to come back to that, but let me finish the triads. Okay, in the heart triad, which is 2, 3, 4, they fundamentally experience the world through the heart. And if you're a 2, 3, or a 4, and some people in the audience are in this triad, if you're a 2, 3, or a 4, you know that often you experience things acutely in the heart. And you might even, if it's a negative experience, if you're being criticized, if you've made a mistake, if you're being called out, you might even experience what feels like sort of emotional heart paralysis, a sort of numbness in the chest. It's a little bit paralyzing when you experience this numbness in the chest. And I know that some of you have actually experienced that. I have. I'm in that triad. I'm a 3. So again, they're experiencing words and events and experiences through the heart. Moving into the next triad, the head triad, these are the thinkers. They primarily experience the world through their mind. They process. They like to process. They like to think. So these are the 5s, 6s, and 7s. And I'm going to come back to all of this. So, okay, but again, the triad is what part of the body are you sort of absorbing the world through? What's the conduit into your soul? For the body triad, the conduit is the whole body, shock waves. For the heart types, the conduit is the heart. You can experience heart paralysis when negative things happen, just kind of this tightening of the chest. And then for the mind triad, they're primarily experiencing the world intellectually through the processor upstairs. Okay, this matters because now I want to get into fundamental consumptions or fundamental compulsions. Most people say that the body types, so the gut triad, the fundamental compulsion is anger. So they experience a lot of anger. But the reason for that is the world is coming at them as a barrage of full body shock waves. So they experience a lot of anger in response to this. But what's going to happen in the triads, and I really like this, I got this from Richard Rohr, what you want to think about is the center point in the triad. So think about the body type. What's the center point for the body triad? 9. That's the center point. The preceding number is the 8. The following number would be the 1. And what Richard Rohr says is if the fundamental compulsion of the body triad is anger, the preceding number will be the obvious compulsion. So what's the preceding number for the body triad? It is 8. The center point is 9. The preceding number is 8. So in the preceding number, the number that precedes the center point, it's the obvious manifestation of the compulsion. So 8s as the preceding number to the center point are the most obviously angry people. If you've ever known an 8, you know this is true. Recently, in our interactions here in this environment, there has been a couple of 8s present. I'm not going to name names. I don't want to embarrass people if this gets posted somewhere. But just think about, is there anyone we've been around that anger flashes pretty quickly? Just everybody's kind of on pins and needles. People kind of walk on eggshells. It's like, whoa, what impact is this going to have on this person? Because we know that anger is like the natural reaction. So again, I want to say preceding number is obvious compulsion. Center point number is what we call the pure or the double compulsion. And the reason we say pure or double compulsion is because their wings are both still in that triad. So a 9 is a body triad, and his or her wings are also both in the body triad. So no matter what they do, it's hard for them to escape experiencing the world through the body.
When you say wings, explain that just briefly.
Okay, so there's going to be 9 numbers. All the Enneagram teachers agree. You are one number. You will manifest attributes of all the numbers. So it's very common when you hear the Enneagram for the first time, you'll have no idea who you are. Yeah, maybe I'm a 6, but we all agree you are one fundamental energy. But you will manifest attributes from, like for instance, everybody here has gotten angry at some point. But that doesn't mean you're a part of the body triad. Okay, so again, you are one number, but you'll manifest attributes, and you especially will take on some of the attributes of the numbers right next to you. So if you're an 8, which is the obvious compulsion, so they're the most likely to manifest anger, they'll also take on some of the attributes of a 7 and a 1. And if we have time, you'll see why that's important to talk about the wings and taking on some of those attributes, because it turns out that, for instance, the 8, which has the strongest proclivity or tendency towards anger, that tendency or proclivity towards anger is dampened by their wings. Because the 7s are the party animals who love to have fun, and they're almost never angry. And the 9s are the peacemakers. And the way that they fight their tendency towards anger is to just like snuff it out and be peacemakers. And so it's nice for 8s to have those wings they can sort of lean into. Okay, so did everybody hear? The preceding number from the center point is the obvious compulsion. For the body triad, the compulsion is anger. 9 is the center point. It's what we call the double compulsion because they can't get away from it. Their wings and their own energy are all body. Then if you go to the following number, so the number that follows the center point, that's referred to as the conflicted compulsion. So they experience a lot of anger because they're gut people, but they try their best to fight it. They don't like being angry. It creates this inner conflict. They see themselves as not being angry people, but they are angry, and so it creates a lot of conflict. So did everybody hear that? That's going to hold for all the triads. Center point is pure compulsion. Previous number is obvious compulsion. Following number is conflicted compulsion. Okay, I want to move into the heart triad. Very few Enneagram teachers say it this way, but I'm going to say it this way. I think the fundamental compulsion, if you're a heart person, I'm going to close my eyes so we don't have to make eye contact. The fundamental compulsion of the heart person is insecurity. Heart people are so desperate to have people like or love or admire them that they just walk around kind of riddled with insecurity. Okay, so the preceding number in the heart triad is the 2. 1 second. The 2. So the preceding number is the obvious compulsion. So 2s are the most obviously insecure of all the heart types. Of like, you can just see them just sort of clawing and desperately wanting people to give them sort of affirmation and love and affection, and just sort of it just they wear the insecurity on the sleeves. Question.
You said this is not usually how this is taught regarding the like compulsion of 2 and 4, and you mentioned it's insecurity. Well, what's usually taught about?
Yeah, most of the time they'll say emotion. They'll just say emotion. And so the 2s would be the ones that show the most emotion, which I think is fine. But emotion isn't a compulsion. Like anger, like would we all agree anger is not something we're super happy? Like anger is not a great attribute most of the time. When you say emotion, it's like that could be positive, that could be negative. So I really want to like strike at the root of like, no, like what's the compulsion? What's the thing that's going to like handicap you here? That might not be the best word. What's the thing that's going to be a drag on you? It's insecurity. And I'm telling you, 2s, 3s, and 4s, I'm a 3 myself. I've lived my whole life with massive amounts of insecurity. And what's crazy about that, so 2s are the obvious compulsion, so you can see they're insecure. 3s are the double or the pure compulsion. What's crazy about it is often the numbers with the pure compulsion, they just hide it. Like if you know 3s, you would never think they're insecure. Because 3s of all the Enneagram numbers project the most confidence. They walk around as if they're on top of the world. They've got everything figured out. But if you get them off the record, behind the scenes, perhaps maybe a little bit liquored up, what you'll discover is they are riddled with insecurity. And most of what they do is to try to get validation from wherever they can get it. Okay, so that's the 3, the pure compulsion. The 4, which is the following number, means it's the conflicted compulsion. So just like the 1s feel anger, but they're not happy about it, and they kind of have this inner conflict, 4s experience a lot of emotion and insecurity, but they don't want to name it because, doggone it, 4s don't want to think that they have to sort of live inside of the rules of operation of society. Like they don't want to feel like they're at the mercy of societal norms and social mores. They just hate that because they want to be unique snowflakes, but they feel insecure and they know it. And you can see it when you give them a compliment, like a 4, a true 4, who spent all morning literally trying to create the perfect look in their outfit, but in a way that you wouldn't know they spent time on it. But if you give them that compliment of, man, your outfit just totally works, you'll see a little spark of, oh, they validated me and I got what I needed and I'm not insecure anymore. Okay, we're going to come back to all the numbers, but I want to get through the triads. Okay, head triad. So the center point is 6. And so remember, preceding number is obvious compulsion. Preceding number is 5. So in the head triad, the 5s are the obvious head people. When we get into the number, you'll see this a little bit more, but they're all head. They'll even tell you this. I don't feel a lot of highs. I don't feel a lot of lows. They want to sort of experience the world from a distance. They want to have time to process. Anyways, we'll come back to that, but they're obviously head people. If you've ever met a 5, they're some of the easiest people on the Enneagram to name. It's like, oh, that's a 5. 8s can be pretty easy. 7s can be pretty easy. 5s can also be pretty easy to identify. Okay, 6 is the pure or the double compulsion. It's the center point. So what I want to say, though, and I should have said this earlier, for the head type, so we said for the body types, the compulsion is anger. For the heart type, the compulsion is insecurity. For the head type, the compulsion is fear. So everyone in the head type actually experiences fear. The 5s deal with it just by intellectualizing everything. They just keep a distance between everything in their body and their heart and the world, and they just process everything through their brain. 6s, double compulsion, both wings are in the head space. 6s are the double fear people, and we'll talk about that when we get to 6s, but they live their lives just sort of riddled by fear, and they try everything they can to sort of mitigate and contingency plan. 7s. Remember, the following number is the conflicted compulsion. I'm a little nervous saying this because there's a 7 in the audience, and I'm not sure, we haven't talked about this. 7s experience fear, a lot of fear, but they don't want to live their life in fear. They know that they experience fear, but they'll rarely name it because that's not who they are and it's not who they want to be. But so they feel conflicted about it. They know it. They're willing to admit it. Again, with the conflicted compulsions, you kind of got to get them off the record and get them talking, but they know it. 7s know that there is an underlying fear. But the way that they fight the fear is, frankly, mostly through like distraction, like joyful, fun distraction. Joyful, fun distraction keeps me from focusing on the underlying fear that's there. Okay, those are the triads. Before I get into the numbers, and I'll try to go fast through the numbers because you're being super patient listening, but before I get into the numbers, are there questions about the triads? Okay, so I'm going to ask a question real quick. Yeah.
Just real quick. Why is that so important to talk about first when the numbers usually are just you talk about what each number is like and that's all you learn about? Like, why do you start there? How does that relate to everything?
Yeah, good question. So why start with the compulsions in the triads? The reason I think it's important to start there is because you can't understand the numbers if you don't understand the underlying compulsion. Like, for instance, I'm a 3. If you don't understand that really the problem with me is massive insecurity, then you won't understand why I go around constantly trying to make people laugh, why I go around trying to be successful at everything I do, why I work so hard to be a good teacher and to get good evaluations. It's because ultimately I'm so wildly insecure that I'm looking for validation. And the way I look for validation is I want a fan club. For me, that's validation. If I get great teacher ratings, that helps to quell my insecurities a little bit, to soothe them a little bit. So I think what you'll discover is with every number, the energy that we describe in those numbers is really in a lot of ways going to be a response to the fundamental compulsion. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's remember, just reviewing here, gut triad, the compulsion is anger. Heart triad, I'm going to call it insecurity. Some people would call it just emotion, but I think insecurity is better. And then in the head triad, it's fear. And remember, the preceding number is obvious compulsion. Center point is pure compulsion. Following number is conflicted compulsion. Groovy? Okay.
You were going to ask a question earlier.
I was gonna test you on the compulsions. Okay, let's get into the numbers. We'll just start with the number 1. So everybody remembers the number 1 is gut type, but conflicted compulsion. So one of the things I want to talk about is fundamental need, cardinal sin, and compulsion. So we've already named compulsion. The compulsion is anger, but they're conflicted. So it's the conflicted compulsion. Okay, the fundamental need, according to most Enneagram experts, but I'm going to play on this a little bit. I'm going to riff on it because I don't love the language, but I think it works. The fundamental need for the 1 is to be right. That can mean that they want to be right in arguments. And if you've been around 1s, you've seen this. If you've been around 1s, there are moments where you'll get into informational disputes. And before long, Google is being pulled out or Merriam-Webster's being pulled out. So it can be that 1s want to be right. Okay, so I'm okay with the language, but that's not really what it means. The fundamental need is for the world to be in order and for things to be operating the way they're meant to operate. For 1s, it's very important that structures are put together, fitly framed. This would be the biblical language. They want the building to be fitly framed. They want the gears to mesh. They want rooms and information and books and refrigerators and dishwashers to be organized. Because frankly, there's a right way to organize a dishwasher and a wrong way. There's a right way to organize a fridge and a wrong way. They love things to be clean and tidy. So their fundamental need to be right is not just to be right in an informational argument. It's the need for the world around them to be right. They want systems to function in a way that's efficient. Few things drive a 1 crazier than to walk into an institution or an organization and to see systems operating that don't work very well. It just drives them crazy. But the great thing about the 1 is where they see brokenness. And you have to know this about a 1. If you want to be friends, if you want to minister to a 1, you have to understand that most rooms they walk into, most organizations they walk into, and most relationships they walk into are broken. And for them, you don't cry about it, you just fix it. Like they are, in fact, a lot of people say that they are the consummate perfectionists. 1s are perfectionists because they see what's wrong, they see what's broken, and they fix it. They see it in the world around them, and they see it in themselves. These are 1s. 1s are very detail-oriented. Nothing falls through the cracks. They're great at organizing. They're great at setting up efficient systems. Really helpful people to have in organizations. Now, again, you have to understand. By the way, we're recording next to Flathead Lake. I don't know if you're picking up on boat sounds going by, but it's fantastic. I hope you can hear it. You have to appreciate that for 1s, you got to put this all together. What is the fundamental compulsion of the gut type? Anger. How do they experience the world? Full body shock waves. What's the most important thing to a 1? The fundamental need is to be right. Every room, every organization, every relationship they walk into is broken, and it's a full body shock wave, which causes them a lot of anger, but they know they want to be good people. They're perfectionists. So the anger causes inner conflict. You have to know this about a 1. You have to know this about a 1. So the cardinal sin, as we've already said, actually, for a 1 is anger. Anger is the cardinal sin. I like this model of matching up the 7 cardinal sins plus 2 with the Enneagram. There's more we could say about 1s. A lot of times people try to attach colors and countries and animals to 1s. One of the things that you also need to know about a 1, a couple of other things. They love authenticity, honesty, and integrity. They do not like people being disingenuous or inauthentic with them. It really rubs them the wrong way. And frankly, they wonder about it a lot. They wonder if people are being authentic with them because it means so much to them. The other thing you have to appreciate is 1s are going to fix it. In their mind, shouldn't we all want to fix it? if it's broken, if this deck is broken, shouldn't we all want to fix it? Like, can I get an amen? If our relationship is broken, shouldn't we want to fix it? Can I get an amen? Which is reasonable. What they don't sometimes appreciate is a lot of times people just feel criticized. So when they get into that moment of like, let's fix it, a lot of people feel criticized. And you can find some fun videos online on YouTube about ones telling some stories where they thought they were doing this great work and the other person ends up crying afterwards, and it's something they wrestle with. Anyways, that's ones. Let me move on. Questions about ones? All right.
Why is the cardinal sin anger when the double conflict is the 9? Shouldn't it be that one?
I don't know the answer to that, except to tell you that 9s are peacemakers. And so even though anger is the compulsion, they do such a good job of suppressing it that they rarely feel it. But the 1s actually feel it. The 8, when we get there, they're fundamental. I'm going to steal my own thunder. The 8's cardinal sin is passion or lust, which is a little bit related to that anger thing. So we'll kind of boomerang back to it when we get there. Any other questions about the 1? We good? Okay. That was fun. There's a 1 present here. I hope the 1 didn't feel too targeted by that. Now we're on to the 2s. There's also a 2 present. And I can tell she already experienced a little bit of heart paralysis there just by looking at her. I'm so sorry. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Do you need somebody to hold your hand as we go through this? Oh, she's going to cry. I'm so sorry. We're already there. Oh, I'll give you a hug afterwards. People are sitting next to you to give you a hug. This is so perfect at the 2. Because what triad are we in now? We're in the heart triad. And it's just pouring out. This is incredible. And she's got wonderful support next to her. That's great. Okay. So we want to talk about fundamental needs, and we want to talk about cardinal sins, right? More boats passing by. Okay. The fundamental need of the 2 is to be loved. Some people say it differently. How other Enneagram teachers say it is the fundamental need of the 2 is to be needed. In fact, they often say the kryptonite word for a 2 is if you say need. If you look at a 2 and say, I need you to do this, they will basically drop everything and do it. So their fundamental need is to be needed, but I think it's to be loved. I don't think it's that they need to be needed. They need to be loved. And they're different than a 3. I'm going to make a distinction. 3s want a fan club. In fact, 3s, I'm a 3, and my wife is sitting here nodding her head about the problem of me wanting a fan club. In fact, I think she wants to make some comments. Anyways, 3s want a fan club. Like 3s would be perfectly happy to do their thing, have their fan club, and then go back to their house and bask in their glory by themselves. But 2s want to be with people. 2s really just want to be with people, and they want to be with people who love them and value them. Like it's actually really beautiful. So the need is to be loved, but the way that they try to grab love, the way that they try to earn love, is by meeting all of your needs. And they almost have a 6th sense. It's like they carry an antenna around. And they pick up these signals from people around them. And they'll grab your plate as soon as you're done eating dinner and go start washing the dishes. I mean, they just know. They sense it. Even before you do, they'll come and meet your needs. But look, one of the things I haven't said yet, I should have said this right at the outset. Sorry, this should have been foundational. The reason I like the Enneagram, Richard Rohr said it best. The Enneagram shows you how your gifts are destroying you. Right? So we all have gifts. If we want to use biblical language, these are gifts of the Spirit. Everybody has gifts of the Spirit. We all have them. But it turns out that our gifts are actually some of our biggest impediments, and they weigh us down. So our gifts destroy us, and the Enneagram shows you how your gifts destroy you. And also, Ian Morgan Cron says it this way. He says, look, you're not going to like this because people are going to want to put you in a box. And you're going to be like, don't put me in a box. You can't type me. Nobody gets to put me in a box. Nobody backs me into a corner. The Enneagram is not putting you in a box. The Enneagram is illuminating the box you've been living in your whole life. That's how this thing works. So, okay, the twos need to be loved. The way that they try to earn love is by anticipating needs, meeting needs. But the problem is when they meet your needs, there's always conditions attached. So, and sorry that I'm latching onto this because we just had dinner and I just watched this wonderful sweet two grab my plate right when I finished dinner and then go start washing the dishes, and it was beautiful. And that's the thing, you love to be around twos because they just make your life so much better in terms of like just meeting your needs before you know it. But the thing of it is when they grab your plate and go wash the dishes, and they don't even know this. They don't even know this. But in their mind, they're slightly keeping a mental account of like, I've done a lot for you. Do you think you could love me a little bit? And I'm going to keep doing more and more. And I don't need a lot, but could you love me a little bit? So they keep serving and they keep giving. And frankly, these are the martyrs, right? Like, it doesn't matter how much burden it puts on me, how much I have to subdue my own needs. I'm going to put others' needs first. Could you just love me a little bit? But this creates a couple problems. First off, almost inevitably, if you ask a two, and I've asked some twos, they will tell you they almost always feel like they give more than they get in a relationship. Like, I'm always giving, I'm always sacrificing way more than people give back to me. Like, they almost always feel that way. The other problem is sometimes in their attempts to sort of garner your affection, they meet your needs in ways that you don't really want. So they can kind of foist their need appeasement onto you in a way that's not welcomed. And you could be like, hey, I was actually still eating. Can I have my plate back? And they're like, oh, yeah. Do you want me to put more food on your plate? And they'll put rice on your plate and more entree. And you're like, no, I actually wanted chips. So then they'll dump the pork back in where the pork was and they'll put the chips on. You're like, hey, how about this? How about this? What if I just got my own food? And they'd be like, yeah, but if you got your own food, you won't love me because I need to get the food for you. So this creates a bit of a problem with twos. Another problem with twos, they oftentimes don't have clarity on their own needs. They're so busy prioritizing other people, trying to meet their needs, that if you sit them down, if they say, hey, what do you need? If you say, what I need right now is for you to just tell me what you need, you'll get into what Excel calls a circular reference error. And they'll just keep going back and forth saying, no, what do you need? No, what do you need? And sometimes they'll actually break down in tears because they won't be able to name what they need. So the fundamental need is to be loved. The cardinal sin, this is going to be a little bit, it's going to surprise people. The cardinal sin of the two is pride. And you might be like, wait a second, they're helpers. They meet people's needs. They love. They're so affectionate. How could it be pride? The pride that they experience is the pride of knowing that they know what you need before you know. They take a lot of pride in that, of like they have pride around being able to meet your needs. And so this is where the pride comes in. And I'm going to name it now, their path of disintegration. So when twos are unhealthy, they can look a lot like eights. And eights are like the hyper-aggressive, angry people. And twos hate that about themselves. When they get into their darker moments and they start feeling like all I do is give and give and give and no one gives back and nobody loves me as much as I love, and then they devolve into eight land, and in eight land they can get angry and they can have outbursts. And twos can get angry in ways that are very embarrassing for them, and then you have to go in and tell them, no, it's okay. Anyways, any questions about twos? I'm going to move on to the three. Yeah.
Do you want to go into briefly disintegration and integration? What it means? Like,
yeah.
Do that with each number, or would that make us too long?
Okay, let me go through the numbers. We'll come back. So path of disintegration and integration is a pretty simple concept. When one number looks healthy, it actually starts to look like a different number. And when it looks unhealthy, it also starts to look like a different number in an unhealthy way. So maybe I'll come back to that. So like I just said, the two's path of disintegration, when they're in a bad space, they're going to look a lot like an 8. They'll take on the worst qualities of an 8. In their best moments, they'll take on the best qualities of a 4, but we haven't gotten to the 4 yet. So, okay, 3s. Can we move on? I'm a 3. There's another 3 present. Okay. The fundamental need of the 3 is to be admired and to be seen as successful. These are the winners. I don't know how else to say it. In fact, when Richard Rohr teaches Enneagram, he assigns animals to each of the numbers. In fact, I don't know if you'd care to know. I won't remember all the animals, but for the one, the animal is the barking dog because they're always barking about what needs to be fixed. For the two, it's the puppy that gets on your lap and licks your face even when you don't want to be licked. For the three, it's the racehorse, the thoroughbred. So threes fundamentally need to be viewed as successful. They need to be admired. Threes oftentimes can walk into a room and pick up on power energy. They can walk into a room and they can figure out who the power players are. And threes can be chameleons. This drives people crazy. I've had people complain about this in my life. They will say that threes can be a completely different person depending on what group they're with. Right? They can be with this group and they can just melt into that group. They can be with this other group. In fact, some Enneagram teachers have told stories where you go to a funeral of a three and there will be such disparate groups there. And you'll get to telling stories about the three and you'll be like, did I even know this person? Like, the stories I'm hearing from these groups sounds like a totally different human being. I have no idea what you're talking about. Right? And so, like, in my own life, I mean, I think about this, right? Like, right now I'm serving in an ecclesiastical position, so I can stand up in front of the congregation and I can preach and be very reverent and spiritual. And then I can go on a snowmobiling trip and I can look an awful lot like an 8th grade boy in a locker room. And you can just like ping pong into these different groups really comfortably. Threes usually can get along with people pretty easily. One of the things that they say about threes, which might not apply to everybody, but it certainly is true for me. In fact, Richard Rohr, I learned most of my Enneagram from Rohr, he said the great thing about the Enneagram is when you finally hear your number, you should feel humiliated. Like when somebody finally starts naming your number, you should be kind of embarrassed of like, wait a second, this person is revealing all my secrets. So one of the things he said about threes, they are often more impressive in front of groups than they are in one-on-one conversations. And it strikes me that right now I've got a group of people sitting here looking at me while I talk. And I'm just like soaking it in. Like this is like nirvana for a three. Except my wife is like not looking at me. She's like, I'm not going to give you the fan club right now. So, when he said they're often more impressive in front of groups than one-on-one. And I have actually had students on my evaluations write, in class, he was amazing, like so dynamic. And I went to see him in his office and it was like, he didn't even want me there. And when I heard Rohr say that about threes, I was like, oh, this is humiliating. But the reason for that is, and you have to know this about threes, for most of us, an audience of one just isn't big enough. I hate to say that. For threes, we need more than one person. We need a fan club. So when you start getting more people in the room, now we get animated. You can even see it with threes. The bigger the group gets, the bigger their presence becomes, the more animated they become, the more jokes they tell. It's so humiliating to say that. Because we're fundamentally heart people. We do crave love and we do feel intense emotion, but it's just this drive to be seen as successful. Okay. The cardinal sin of the three is very embarrassing. The cardinal sin is not one of the 7 cardinal sins. It's one of the 2 additional ones. It's deceit. Threes view the truth as somewhat malleable. Actually, very malleable. This has never been on stage and demonstrated more clearly in America than with President Donald Trump. And I'm not trying to go political here, but I remember when he was president, one of the reporters quoted a bunch of facts that were basically oppositional to the president's platform and agenda. And they said, what do you do with these facts? I mean, you're doing all these things with your agenda and all these programs, and the facts are not supporting it. And I remember the spokesperson said, President Trump is operating with an alternative set of facts. And I thought, that's like the mantra for the three. We have an alternative set of facts that justify pretty much whatever we do. And threes can be terrible about this. We can do almost anything and talk ourselves into believing it was moral. Like literally, we can do almost anything and talk ourselves into believing it was the right decision. The other problem with the deceit thing is because we're so eager to be seen as successful, we want to be winners, we want a fan club, we will often manipulate and use people. And that's what we mean by deceit. people can become pawns on our chessboard. And what's really terrible about it is we usually have decent people skills, so we do know how to manipulate. We know how to go up and make you feel special. We know how to give you that compliment to make you feel like, oh my gosh, I'd run through a wall for this guy. Then we have you run through a wall, and then we just walk by your corpse and go take the prize. And we don't give any credit sometimes to the corpses that ran through the walls for us. So you have to be real careful around a 3. They can use you. They can abuse you if you're not careful. And the 3s that are healthier that I've known try to fight this. I know I've tried to fight it, but I slip back into it every once in a while. Yeah, okay, 3s. Any question about 3s? Yeah.
Just because it's your number, are there any personal, unique points of information you could share because you've experienced that you wouldn't be able to share for any other number?
Well, let me just share this. I'm a 3. I'm married a 1. I don't think there's any such thing as like ideal matches on the Enneagram, and I want to be careful not to suggest that. But I do think that when you marry, or even in friendships, whatever your Enneagram numbers are, there's going to be some pros and cons. When a 1 and a 3 get together, one of the cons is she's constantly sort of seeing what's broken in the systems in our house and in our relationship. Like what's not going well is very clear to her. And then her mindset is, let's fix it. If something's broken, shouldn't we all want to fix it? My fundamental need is a fan club. So do you remember what I said earlier? A lot of times 1s can come off as being abrasive and critical, even though they're just trying to fix things and they have really good intentions. So as a 3, when she's just trying to fix things, I experience it as critical and abrasive, and I'm a heart person, so I get heart paralysis. It's been really hard, right? So it's been in moments. It's been an oil and water combination in the sense of she's just trying to fix what's wrong with our relationship, and I'm being I shut down, I get heart paralysis because where's my fan club? And it took me years to look in the mirror and say, wait a second, your wife should not be in your fan club. And maybe you shouldn't have a fan club at all. And once I came to this conclusion of like, guess what? You shouldn't have a fan club. And your wife doesn't have to be the president or even be in the fan club. Things got a lot better on my side of like, okay, I think I've gotten better at being in these conversations of, yeah, we need to talk about stuff. She's giving me a half nod. Okay, any other questions about 3s?
I've heard a lot about 3s being able to make things work. Do you think that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think because they want a fan club. Sorry that I keep saying that, but I just think it's the best, cleanest way to say it. They want to be admired. They want to be seen as winners. They do seem to have this, people say they have the Midas touch. Like, whereas 1s can go into an organization and see what's broken and fix it and get the systems efficient, the 3s will come in and say, okay, what do we need to do to take this thing to the next level? Right? So like, think of a CEO. A 1 CEO will come in and say, okay, what's all the broken stuff that's like holding us back? They'll get that cleaned up and fixed, which is super important. The 3 would come in and they might be okay at that, but what their gift is going to be is like, okay, in the stock market, the way that you get a stock price to appreciate is you've got to grow the revenue, you got to grow the net income, you got to grow the business. So yeah, let me get a 1 as my chief operations officer, and I'm going to get a 1 to clean up the company. It's like, hey, Mr. 1 or Mrs. 1, will you go do all that? Great. I don't want to deal with that. And then the 3 is going to sit down and say, okay, how do we grow this thing? How could we twist our products? What new markets could we penetrate? Like 3s have the vision for that. So they do tend to have this Midas touch of like when they coach, their teams win. When they become CEOs, revenue grows. Organizations win, but again, they can leave a wake of carnage behind them. They can leave a wake of like people have been used and abused, and so they have to be careful on that. But yeah, they oftentimes do really well as leaders of organizations. Other questions? Should we move on to 4? Okay. Is everybody okay? This is taking a long time. Are we okay?
This is great.
Okay, 4s.
We're still rolling.
There's no 4s here, but if you know a 4, in fact, I think when I start talking about 4s, you're going to be like, oh, that explains things. Okay, so remember 4 is in the heart triad. It's the following number. So it's the conflicted compulsion. So they feel a lot of emotion, but they're kind of not, they don't like that they feel so much emotion. Okay, 4s, the fundamental need is to be unique and special. They want to be a snowflake, and they really want other people to acknowledge their snowflakeness, if that's a phrase. Okay, so the fundamental need is to be unique. And the way that they try to be unique is usually through art, aesthetics, literature, language, metaphors, and dress. So usually the 4s are very lyrically gifted. These are your poets. These are your novelists. These are your artists. These are your musicians. Not all of them, but they're typically very, very creative. 4s have a beautiful eye for aesthetics. They can walk into a room and see exactly what colors need to be paired, what plants need to be brought into the room, what paintings need to be put in the room. And when they get done with a space, almost always you walk away saying chic. Like it's very chic. It's like beautiful, but in kind of a unique, hip kind of way. It's not like magazine beautiful. It's like just unique, but chic and just wonderful. They're super good at that. And they get bothered, frankly, when they walk into a space and they can tell there's been no thought given to it. They're just like, what is this? Like, and a part of their uniqueness, so they're great with their words. Oftentimes, okay, the other thing you got to know about 4s. Ian Morgan Cron said it best, but then I'm going to tweak his words a little bit. 4s don't have emotions, they are their emotions. So when they're sad, they're inconsolable. When they're angry, things are being thrown across the room. When they're happy, they'll kiss the top of your head and weep on you. They're just so happy. Their emotions are just intense. But related to that, the thing you have to know about 4s, they have a very special relationship with melancholy and depression. They get energy from being depressed. And you can almost pick a 4 just by their eyes. And I hate to say this, 4s are, of any of the Enneagram types, by far the most susceptible to self-harm. By far. Because for some reason they get energy from being in those spaces of darkness. And when they get into those spaces of darkness, my goodness, I mean, these are the kind of people that will lock themselves away for 3 weeks and you won't hear from them. And it's just total darkness. 4s can also be very volatile. I heard a story once online from a self-identified 4 that just broke my heart. Just demonstrating the volatility of the intensity of the emotion. She said, okay, there was this guy and he caught my fancy. And I just desperately wanted this guy to fall in love with me. And so she turned on her 4 charm, and 4s can be very alluring. Because again, they know how to dress in this way that's like so fashionable, so chic, but they make it look like they didn't even try. It's like effortless fashion. And they can really be charming and witty with their words, and they're very creative, so they can sing a song for you and it'll just hit you. She's like, so I went after this guy, got him to fall in love with me, and the day we got married, I stopped having any feelings for him. And like, I just went numb. Like I got what I wanted. We were married for a few years. It was horrible. The guy divorces me. The day he signed the divorce papers, I wanted him back. She says just the intensity came right back. Just, I've got to have him. I can't believe I lost him. So she went after being alluring and charming and witty and got him back. And they got married again. And the day they signed the marriage papers, she totally lost interest in him. And she said not long after they divorced again, and like he won't have anything to do with her. But it's just this idea of like, can be this roller coaster of highs and lows. And again, in order to understand a 4, you've got to understand they have a special relationship with melancholy. But that's also one of their gifts. So for instance, when I get to a later number, there's another number on the Enneagram that doesn't want to deal with negative energy. It doesn't want to sit in that space. 4s are very comfortable in that negative space. If you're sad and you just need somebody to sit with you in your sadness, you go find a 4. I mean, there's nobody better at it than a 4. Just sit in the sadness with you. So you have to know that they have a special relationship with sadness. Don't try too hard to get them out of that space too fast. And you also have to understand that they desperately need to be seen as unique. But that ties into their cardinal sin. Their cardinal sin is jealousy. Because they're the musicians. They're the poets. They're the painters. They're the interior designers. They're the fashionistas. So you just know when you go to a fashion show and somebody hits it out of the park, there's 10 other designers there fuming. And they'll go on the cameras and play nice. But you know deep down they're just jealous as heck. Because they're supposed to be the unique, skilled, creative one. Anyways, that's fours. Questions about fours? Fives. Okay, now we move into the head types. So we're going from the 4 to 5. Remember, this is the biggest gap, 4 or 5 at the bottom of the Enneagram. There's a big gap between 4 and 5. Okay, 5 is the head type. And remember that the preceding number, so 6 is the center point, 5 is the preceding number. Remember, the preceding number is the obvious compulsion. And remember that the compulsion in the head type is actually fear, right? So, and I should have said 4s, 3s, and 2s, they all feel insecurity, but they deal with it in different ways, right? The ways that 2s deal with insecurity is they just try to serve people to get them to love them. The way that 3s deal with insecurity is to try to be successful so that nobody can question them. The way that 4s deal with insecurity is to just try to be so unique in all that they do. Okay, 5s, fear is the compulsion. They're the obvious compulsion. But the way that 5s deal with the compulsion is they just try to distance themselves from emotion. So 5s are the consummate intellectuals. 5s think. And that's how they do everything. And if you've ever, we have somebody in our family that's a 5. And when I started learning about Enneagram, this was one of the main reasons I got interested. I was like, wait a second, I finally understand this person in my family. So 5s just have great minds. They love information. Their fundamental need, the fundamental need of a 5 is to be informed. They need to have knowledge. The need is knowledge. I hope this is okay. Richard Rohr tells the story of a 5 who said being in a library surrounded by all those books is an orgasmic experience for her. Like it borders on a sexual thing to be around that much information. It's just like, oh, like, sorry. But it's like, that's how much they love knowledge. Now, we witnessed this because somebody in our family, like I said, who's a 5, I always wondered about this. Like when he was in high school on the weekends, a lot of his buddies would be out doing what normal high schoolers do. And he'd be on YouTube and I'd be like, oh, maybe he's like watching games or silly stuff on YouTube. No, he was like watching math videos on YouTube on Friday nights, right? This is like how they get their energy, is just learning. And to this day, he'll be sitting at our counter and if nothing's going on, he'll just start scribbling math equations. And you'll just see him staring off in the distance, tapping a pencil on the counter. And you just know, like, information is like processing in his head. So 5s love information. They'll also tell you they're not super comfortable with emotion. And so they like to keep a distance from emotion. 5s will tell you they never get too high and they never get too low, which is the total opposite of a 4. Because what did we just say about 4s? Massive roller coaster. But the 5 is like very temperate. That would be the biblical word for this. Very just even keeled. Now, what they say is great about 5s is because they experience so little emotion, they're basically your cold-hearted rationalist. So one of the things they say is if you're ever in situations of leadership where there's a lot of emotion, so you're in organizations and there's a lot of just, there's strong feelings, you want a 5 as your advisor. If you ever become a king, you want a 5 as your advisor because they'll just give you the facts. It's just calculus for them. It's not about emotion. It's not about bias. In fact, they'll call you on the bias. And they won't call you in a mean way, but they'll just name it. They're just like, well, that's biased. And so they'll call the bias. They're going to take all the irrationality out of the equation and they'll just give you really sound advice. So they're really great as advisors, like chief of staff style roles for 5s. One of the downsides of 5s, they can miss social cues because there's not much emotion. It's all intellectual. So they can miss social cues. But what I find endearing about fives, if you ask them the right question, you will find yourself being subjected to the most incredible monologue of your entire life. Because sometimes when you're in fives, if you ask the right question, they're not actually talking to you at that point. It's like they've been filling their heads up with information for years, and you finally removed the floodgates, and what they're doing is just data dump. And they don't really care who's on the other side. It's just they're mostly just processing the information on the way out. And it's true. If you've ever been around a five, you've experienced a monologue, and it's incredible. The other thing they say about fives is fives are a little reluctant with romantic relationships because it's too much emotion. It's too messy. Human bodies, naked bodies together is too much intensity for them. It just makes them a little uncomfortable. And so a lot of times fives are, in fact, the way Richard Rohr says it is fives would be just as happy to be married to their computers and the internet as they would to be married to a person. So oftentimes fives won't pursue romantic partners. They have to be pursued. That's a pretty normal thing about a five. Okay, the cardinal sin of the five is avarice or being miserly. But it's not about money. It's about they're just not givers. They're takers. And it's not in a like selfish way. It's just they want information. In fact, a lot of times a five will exhaust you. Like if they view you as somebody that has a lot of information, they'll just follow you around and pepper you with questions. And you'd be like, okay, we're 9 hours into this. Maybe we just take a break. And they're like, yeah, but you have more information I need. And what'll happen is they take the information, but then they don't often give it back. And a lot of times if you ask a five questions, they won't share very much. Like if you say, hey, five, what are your plans for the summer? I don't know. And that's it. And they'll feel like, well, that was a good conversation. Like we asked the question, there's an answer. That's fantastic. So they're very miserly with what they give out in terms of like sharing stuff. They're very guarded. They also say that fives, because they're takers, they're just naturally, they just like to take things and soak it in. A lot of times they'll take physically as well in terms of like food or gifts or whatever, and they won't even know it. So Enneagram gurus all say 5-2 matches can be really problematic because the 2 is constantly giving to try to earn affection, and the 5 just constantly takes and never wants to give back. And all the Enneagram gurus say inevitably a 2-5 relationship has an explosive moment where the 2 is like, what the heck? I've just been giving and giving and giving, and you never give back. And the 5 is like, what are you talking about? Like, I never asked you to give me all that stuff. Like, what are we doing right now? So anyways, that's the cardinal sin is avarice or being miserly or guarded. Questions about the 5? All right, we're getting there. Thanks for your patience.
Real fast.
Yeah.
Just talk about the compulsion and why 5 is manifested both the compulsion and fear.
Yeah.
I don't think you touched on that already in depth.
Yeah, I didn't hit on that. I think of all of the triads, it's not as clear, to be honest with you. Like in the body triad, the 8 is going to manifest a lot of anger. In the heart triad, the 2 is going to manifest a lot of emotion. In the head triad, what they're going to manifest is a lot of head, but not so much fear, right? We said the compulsion was fear. So with the 5, you're going to see a lot of head. And maybe that's how I should have said it. With the preceding number, you're going to see a lot of the triad. You're going to see a lot of head with the 5, a lot of body with the 8, a lot of heart with the 2. That's probably the better way to say it. That's a good question. Thank you. Okay, into the 6s. This will be the shortest one. This is the one I know the least about, and I'm excited to get to the 7 because we have a 7 here. Okay, 6s. Center point. 6s are the pure or the double compulsion. Remember, the compulsion in the head triad is fear. This is what defines 6s. Okay, so you have to understand about a 6. They fundamentally view the world as an unsafe place. 6s are often operating from a place of anxiety, a place of uncertainty, a place of worry, a place of fear about everything. They're often called the loyal skeptics, meaning they don't trust anything. They're just so scared. And they're fearful. And so if you come to them and present information, they're going to not trust it. They're not going to believe it. If you understand that about a 6, then you'll understand the fundamental need is security. The fundamental need of a 6 is security. But how do you get security if you view the world as fundamentally unsafe, if it's an insecure place? What you do is you find institutions or people that convince you they are strong authority figures, and you line up behind them and you just give your allegiance to them. So one of the best attributes of sixes is once they actually trust you, they can be some of the most loyal people in the world. Sixes literally will run through walls for the leaders and the organizations that they've given their allegiance to. And that's a beautiful thing. We actually need people in this world who are willing to run through walls for good causes. So we have to make sure we name that. Okay, because they have this fundamental fear, they're going to be skeptics. They're going to ask a ton of questions. All the Enneagram gurus say when you go and teach Enneagram, the first people that come up afterwards are the sixes. And they want to question you about some stuff, and then they want to say, what number do you think I am? And they got to get it figured out because they're feeling a lot of insecurity because they don't know what number they are. But it's different than an 8. 8s will ask questions, but 8s are aggressive. 6s are humble. 6s are not mean. They're not aggressive. They're usually very pleasant to be around. They're just nervous and scared. And you can see it in the eyes. You remember how I tried to say it's about energy. It's not attributes. When you look in people's eyes, you can see a fear. And you start to pick up on this. So they're scared. So one of the things that they say about Enneagram 6s that's really interesting is fundamental religions. Fundamental religions and some of the hardcore political organizations attract 6s. Because if you think about fundamental religion, what does fundamental religion argue? We have the code that will get you saved, right? The world is not safe. Eternity is not safe. You could burn in hell. You probably don't want to burn in hell. Which, by the way, if you stand in front of a 6 and you preach hellfire and damnation, that's their kryptonite. You remember how I said earlier that for 2s, if you say, I need you, that's kryptonite. For a 6, if you say, there's a place where you could burn in hell, 6s are like, oh my gosh, how do I avoid that? And you're like, the way you avoid that is follow me. And they're like, okay, I'm in. And so we tend to think that fundamental religions and aggressive political organizations are filled with 6s because they're scared. And when they find a strong authoritarian leader, they'll line up behind them because it gives them a sense of security. 6s also, if you listen to them, like if you go online or if you go to focus groups where there's all these self-described 6s, they'll say that their superpower is to see everything that could go wrong. So if you're going to go hiking, for instance, it's going to be a 2-hour hike, 1.5 mile out and 1.5 mile back. The 6s are going to take basically 3 backpacks. There's going to be 7 granola bars for every person. There's going to be 2 gallons of water for every person. There's going to be 3 first aid kits. There's going to be pre-made splints. Like they talk about this, their superpowers, like everything that could go wrong. Because it's not just, you have to appreciate, it's not just that you could be attacked by a bear. It's that while you're dying, a vulture could come and peck at you. So we've got to prepare for all of that. It's not just the bear attack, it's the vultures coming afterwards. And so they're going to just be over-prepared for everything. You have to be careful. Sometimes 1s and 6s can look a lot alike. Because 1s will be super organized and prepared, but it's not because they're scared. It's just because they understand how to organize stuff. So 1s and 6s, like on that front, if you're going on a hike, they're going to both look organized and prepared. But the 6s are kind of over-prepared. Like that's the hallmark of a 6. We're scared, we over-prepare. So I've already said the cardinal sin of the 6 is also one of the 2 additional ones. It is fear. Fear is the fundamental sin or the cardinal sin of the 6. Again, I feel least familiar with 6s because I don't have a lot of 6s close to me. But any questions about 6s? Yeah.
Do you have enough knowledge to talk about how there's kind of like aggressive 6s and
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. Yeah, thanks. That's super helpful. So yeah, all the Enneagram teachers say that there are 2 types of 6s. There's phobic and counterphobic 6s. That's really important. I'm so glad you brought that up. Counterphobic 6s deal with their fear through timidity. So the counterphobic 6 is going to look very timid, very humble, not aggressive at all, and they're the ones that are going to be looking for some strong authoritarian figure to lead them. Counterphobic 6s deal with their fear through aggression. So I sort of tend to think of, these days people talk a lot about toxic masculinity. I actually think a lot of what's happening with toxic masculinity is counterphobic sixes. They're actually very afraid. There's an underlying fear, and the way they deal with it is by punching back at reality with this like overblown sense of masculinity and power. And so those are the counterphobic sixes. And all of the Enneagram teachers will tell you that counterphobic sixes are probably the most dangerous people out there because they're terrified, and the way they're going to deal with their terror is by being aggressive and violent. Not always violent, but aggressive. Thank you. That was an important question. Other 6 questions.
Why are you least familiar with sixes?
Nobody in my family is a 6 that I can pick up on. And so I've lived with 1s, I've lived with 2s, I've lived with 5s, I am a 3, my close friend is an 8. I just don't have anybody in my circle that I'm super close with that's a 6. I mean, I've pastored some people that are 6s. It's really interesting, by the way, when you're pastoring. I'm going to take a side note here. And this is where the Enneagram kind of has its roots, is really where Rohr learned it was from a Jesuit spiritual director when Rohr was become a Franciscan priest. And the whole idea of the Enneagram was to help you as a pastor. That if you can actually see people deeply as a pastor, you'll know better what to say to them. So I've had 2s. You remember 2s are the ones that need to be loved, and they'll just give, and they'll be martyrs and self-sacrifice just to try to get people to love them. And I had a guy come in my office, and it became clear to me he was a 2. I won't share why, but I was like, oh my gosh, this guy is such a clear 2. And I looked at him at one point when it was appropriate, and I remember I said to him, hey, what if I told you that you are loved completely independent of anything you do? What if I told you that you are loved in a way that never had to be earned? That there is an eternal force that has always loved you completely independent of anything you do or don't do? He just broke down sobbing. And he was like, I just don't even know if I can believe it. Like the words just pierced. I had a 6 come in a few months ago, and again, I won't say how I knew that she was, but it was very obvious, like, oh, this is a 6. And I remember I was just trying to like kind of work through the issues with her. And there was something that had happened in her life that had really turned her life on its head. 6s hate that. Remember what we said? The world is fundamentally unsafe and insecure. So when 6s have something happen that turns the world on its head, it's really hard for them. I said, let me guess. This thing that's happened has made you feel very unsafe. It's made you feel very insecure. And if I had to guess, you're probably the kind of person that you go to great lengths and great measures to make sure that you're prepared for whatever dangers or risks might come at you. So then to have an unforeseen, unexpected turn of events that has caused you great anxiety, that's probably just been so hard for you. And again, she just started sobbing. And I think that's one of the real values of this. It's like, look, you don't want to turn into a parlor game. You don't want to go around typing people. But when you feel the energy and you actually get it, then you see these people. You actually see the core. And you understand, first off, you understand what you better not do, because you understand real quickly how to manipulate them. And you better not do that. Never manipulate people. The other thing is you understand what matters to them. You understand the fundamental need. And you can meet the need. Wouldn't that be a cool superpower? I've often thought this. If I could have any superpower, the superpower I would want is to know, what does that person need right now? And then I would try to help meet that need. And I feel like the Enneagram is like a half step towards that superpower. Oh, I know what they need. So, okay. Should we move on to 7s?
Yeah.
We have a 7 present. Here we go. 7s, by the way, are some of the most delightful people on the Enneagram. You know it the minute you meet them. The minute this person walked in the house and said hi to me, I was like, 7! Woo! Here we go. Because they just have this incredible positive energy. You cannot kibosh the positive energy of a 7. They just won't let you. Their spirit is unbreakable. Okay, so the fundamental need of a 7 is to have fun and adventure. They live for fun. They live for adventure. Sevens are the most energetic. Let me just say this. Everybody that's listening to this, which there's 6 of you here right now, and maybe one other person will listen if we post it. Everyone listening to this has met a 7. Here's how you know a 7. You've interacted with them enough that you've gone home at some point and you've shaken your head and you've said, are they real? Is that person real? Because their smile and the sparkle in their eye and their positivity is real. Like literally, they could get hit. They could be pounding in a nail, hit their thumb, shatter their nail, and they'll actually laugh about it. They'll be like, "Oh, that hurts so bad. Did you guys see? I just hit my thumb with a hammer." And everybody else is going to be like, maybe cry, maybe not smile. And they're going to be like, I know, but it was just so crazy how the hammer just slipped and hit my thumb. And at some point you go home and you're like, are they real? Like that kind of optimism can't be real. But it's real. It is. This is one of the beautiful things about 7s. They bring this just unbreakable, unbending positivity and we all need the optimism of a 7. But I'm going to tell you a secret about 7s. There is fear behind it. There is fear. Fundamentally, they look at the world and you can occasionally catch a glimpse in their eyes. You can occasionally catch a glimpse of the fear, but it'll only last for a nanosecond. And it'll be quickly replaced by a smile. And you'll quickly start talking about either the coolest thing that happened earlier in the day or the next adventure. So the adventure and the fun, oftentimes for a 7, is a distraction from the fear that's deep down. Okay, what else can I say about 7s? Hold on, I got to say one other thing about 7s. So, 7s, they love adventure. They also love, and I'd never noticed this until Roar pointed it out. They love to travel and they love infinite horizons. They love to be up in planes, seeing the open horizon. They love to be on the tops of peaks, looking out over the landscape. And I'm guessing it's because it just represents infinite possibility of like, the world is my oyster. There are a million adventures to be had. And from this peak, I can see it. So they love that. Okay, now the one downside, like the main downside with 7s, because they're so positive, so optimistic, unbendingly optimistic and positive, they don't like negative emotion. So if you're feeling sad or melancholy and you go to a 7 wanting them to just like weep with you, just be sad with me, you're not likely going to get it. In fact, oftentimes they're going to look at you and they're going to point out the bright side, which is helpful because we don't want to wallow in our melancholy, but they're going to point out the bright side and they're going to pat you on the back and they'll hug you and they'll squeeze their cheek next to your cheek and you'll feel the smile next to your crying face. And it's almost as if they're trying to gift their smile to you. It's like if I put my cheek on your cheek, I will turn your frown upside down. Through osmosis, you will get my smile. But they're not going to want to sit with you and talk about I saw this, by the way. In a different pastoral role, I was sort of in a co-pastoral role with somebody. He was like the biggest 7 in the world and so much fun. And everybody that knows him loves him. He's amazing. But we had to go meet with somebody who, I don't remember all the circumstances, but like the spouse had left them, they'd lost their job, the dog had died, the house was being foreclosed, like everything bad you could imagine was happening to them. And I could tell when we were talking to this person, they just wanted somebody to sit with them in their sadness. Like that's all they needed. They realized there's no fixing this. The spouse isn't coming back. I'm not going to keep the house. The dog is dead. Like it's all done. But they just needed somebody to just sit with them in the negative emotion. And the guy I was with, and I was just learning about the Enneagram, and I was like, let me see what happens here. And the guy looked at this person and said, that must be really hard. Things are going to get better. I just know things are going to get better. And I remember thinking to myself, that's true, and that's a good message, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's not what they need right now. And so that's one of the downsides with 7 is they struggle to sit in their emotions. I'm trying to remember what's the cardinal 7. Oh, gluttony. Yeah, gluttony is the cardinal sin of the 7, as Richard Rohr likes to say. They like to get so hopped up on fun and adventure, that if they could eat good food all day long, they just eat good food all day long. If they could go, we're by a lake, if they could go wakeboarding, tubing, and water skiing all day long, they would do it all day long. If they could have fun sun up to sundown, they would do it, and frankly, not get tired. They're also Energizer bunnies. They have energy like nobody else you've ever known. It's incredible. Okay, that's sevens. Were there questions about sevens?
Yes.
Yeah.
You know that you mentioned fear. They feel a lot of fear. Is there a specific thing they're afraid of? And if so, what is it?
It's a general underlying uncertainty about everything around them, about the future, about the people around them. And frankly, I'm guessing now, I'm not a 7. I oftentimes wish I was a 7. Because you watch a 7 and they just look like they're having such a great time in life. It's like, I want to have that much fun. So I think most of us look at 7s and we're a little jealous. It's like, good. But a little bit of my guess is there's just uncertainty about, what are all the people around me thinking? What are they feeling? What does tomorrow hold? What does the future hold? So it's just this underlying feeling of uncertainty. But the way we can deal with that is adventure and fun and positivity. And it's, to be honest with you, it's a great way to cope with it. Because I think we all have that. We all have this uncertainty about, what are the people around me thinking? What does tomorrow hold? What does the future hold? What does all of this mean? But to cope with it through positivity and fun, that's a pretty good coping mechanism. Like if I had to choose. Yeah.
I heard someone mention how 7s can sometimes destroy their bodies. Have you seen this?
Well, yeah. So Richard Rohr argues that like Francis of Assisi was a 7. Well, if gluttony is your cardinal sin, yeah, you can do a lot of damage to your body, right? Like, I mean, I could have a Hostess cupcake, or I could have 12, right? I could sit down and I could dip an Oreo in milk, or I could have an entire sleeve of Oreos, right? So like, I think this tendency towards gluttony, but you know what Rohr says, and I'm look again, I don't consider myself on that level on Enneagram, but what Rohr says is part of what's behind this for the 7s, and they'll never tell you this, but it's never enough. Like part of what they'll tell you is like, they have this wonderful sense of anticipation. Oh, we're going to go to the lake. We're going to water ski. We're going to hike. We're going to swim. So there's this wonderful sense of anticipation. But once they get there and they actually do the swimming and the hiking, it's fun, but it's not quite enough. So they need a little more. So when we get back to the cabin after the hike, let's have an Oreo. But the Oreo wasn't quite enough. Let's have 5 Oreos. So it's this sort of building because the one thing never quite satisfies, is what he says. Other 7s, or other questions about 7? Okay, let's crank here. 8. So with 8s, we move back into the gut space, the body type. You guys, by the way, you're being so incredibly patient. Let's finish this thing. 8s. One of my good friends is a self-identified 8, and we've both studied the Enneagram together over the last 4 or 5 years. Okay, 8 is the preceding number. The center point is 9. 8 is the preceding number, so they are the obvious compulsion. So like we said, you're going to see a lot of body with the 8s. And so we said that the fundamental compulsion of the body triad is anger. 8s manifest anger and don't even try to hide it. I think I have a couple of 8s in my extended family. I talked to one of them. I sort of taught him the Enneagram. I was like, hey, dude, I think you might be an 8. And he just kind of laughed. He's like, yeah, I'm an 8. Totally. 8s, the fundamental need is to be powerful, to be viewed as strong. Not necessarily dominating, but strong and powerful. So 8s often have a big energy. You feel the energy when they walk in. They're fearless. They're especially fearless in the face of abused power. If they see somebody in a position of authority, abusing that position of authority, they have absolutely no qualms about calling that person out. The old phrase, speaking truth to power. 8s will speak truth to power and not even think twice about it. They just don't care. 8s, you have to know this about an 8. This is so important to understand about an 8. Intimacy for an 8 is conflict, which for most of the rest of us, we like run from conflict. 2s and 3s, the last thing we want is conflict. How can you be a part of my fan club if we're having conflict? The fan club is supposed to be quiet and cheer me on, not challenge me and ask me questions and, and make me think that you don't agree with me. But for 8s, conflict, they just revel in it. And what they hate is if they push you on something. Like if there was an 8 here, and I'm so glad there's not an 8. Learning about 8s on the Enneagram changed the way I taught. Because as a teacher, inevitably I'd have one student in every class who'd want to raise his hand and challenge me on everything. And I would be like, what a freaking, about said a bad word there. What? Like, who is this guy? Asking me these questions and challenging me. And it would really bug me. And I'd have a hard time teaching the class because I was like, oh, I got this like enemy in the class. And he'd always sit right in the middle. The 8 will sit right in the middle and challenge you. And then at the end of the semester, it would always happen. They'd come and say, Professor Wright, this was like my favorite class ever. And I was like, what are you talking about? It never made sense to me. But now I get it. 8's opposition and conflict is intimacy. And what they hate is if you back down. If they come up to you and they say, well, you said this about 7s, and from what I understand, I think that's off. And if you're like, yeah, you're right, I should have changed that, they'll be like, that was boring. But if they say, well, you should have said this about the 7, you'd be like, well, you're making a point, but actually, if you think about it this way, I was right. They'll be like, oh, we're in it now. Now we're close. And Rohr tells this great story about presenting. And he said it was a multi-day conference. And there was this guy that was just throwing off such negative, almost angry energy. And Rohr goes up to the head of the conference after one of the sessions. He's like, hey, who's that young guy that keeps just challenging me? And the organizer says, oh, it's so-and-so. He adores you. He just holds you on a pedestal. He's hoping you'll ask him out for drinks afterwards. And Roar's like, why would I ask this guy out for drinks? He's done nothing but challenge me. But this is the 8 energy. Conflict is intimacy. You don't want to back down. And I agree with all the Enneagram teachers say, nobody loves the F word more than an 8. Like, they just get juice out of F you. If they can say that to you and you won't back down, you're friends for life, right? And they even like it when you say it back, if you'll just give them that energy right back. What else can I tell you about 8s? Oftentimes they take things to the extreme. So they love, if they're going to get into cars, like my friend, who's the 8, you'll love this. He doesn't just like cars. He built a car from scratch. He got into jogging, yet now he runs 50 milers. He got into canyoneering, yeah, he's done heaps. So these 8s, they can't, like he got into photography. Next thing you know, he's paying for private lessons over a 2-day weekend down in southern Utah, one-on-one with a photographer. Like, they just can't do anything this much. Like, if they pick it up, they're going to go all the way with it. And what's funny is, he got into hiking. He told me in his late 40s, he felt like he was out of shape. He just felt like he should get into hiking to lose weight. And before you know it, he's hiked all 7 peaks in Utah County. And he's got placards showing that he hiked all 7 peaks. So it's like they just can't do anything that much. If they take anything on, it's just going to be over the top. And it's kind of cool. I mean, they're great that way. They're strong. They're powerful. They're tough. Oppositional energy. But the other thing that you have to know about 8s, so conflict is intimacy. That's super important to understand about 8s. The other thing is there is a tender heart deep inside. But that tenderness will only come out if the counterparty is sort of not a threat. So like when an 8 encounters a child, you'll see this incredible tender side come out. So one of the family members who I thought was an 8, and I sort of shared the Enneagram, I was like, hey, I think you're an 8. And I said, hey, but I got to ask you something. They say that Enneagram 8s can have a very tender side in the presence of something that's not a threat. I said, have you ever experienced this? He's like, oh, my dog died a few weeks ago, my Shih Tzu. He's like, look, I don't cry very much, but it just wrecked me. And he said, and we shouldn't have put him down quite yet. We took him to the vet because he was having problems, and the vet said, yeah, he really should just be put down. And, like he was creating problems around the house. And so we just put him down. But I realized later I should have taken him home. I should have spent one more day with them. And on Facebook, he actually posted a picture of him with the dog on his chest. And like, it was a very tender picture. And so Again, with 8's, conflict is intimacy. You got to know that. They're strong, they're powerful, they don't do anything halfway, but there's a tender child heart inside there. But it can't be a threat. And one other thing is they really appreciate justice, which is why if they see somebody in a position of power abusing somebody, so they see an injustice happening, they'll go stand in front of it with a knife. Like this guy, my friend who's an 8 was my boss at work. You'll never have a better boss than an 8, because they'll go defend their people to the higher ups in a way that will blow your mind. Like they'll go put their job on the line to protect the people below them, because they're just that kind of person. Okay, so the fundamental need we said is to be powerful. The cardinal sin is lust or passion, but it's not so much sexual lust, it's passion or zeal for life. Did you catch what I said about, I'm not just gonna go hiking, I'm gonna do all 7 peaks. I'm not just gonna be into cars, I'm gonna build a car. It's that kind of passion that we're talking about. So, okay, questions about 8s. I'm trying to get us through here. This is taking too long. Okay, 9s, we're almost done. 9 is the center point, gut type. That means they're the pure compulsion. Remember, it's anger. But the way that 9s deal with their anger is they completely suppress it. It's like it's just not allowed. So with the 8s, they just let it out. With the 1s, they kind of wrestle with it. With the 9s, they just step on it. And so to see a 9, you would never know that there's any sort of anger underneath them. They're the most placid, docile, low energy people you can be around. And if you've ever been around a 9, it's both incredibly pleasant and it can also be a little maddening because you have to carry all the conversations. 9s barely have the energy to talk. You can get them talking, but you got to get them on the right subject. They're peacemakers. They're known as the harmonizers. If there's conflict, they almost have a superpower of like reaching out telepathically and just making the room all get along. Rohr tells this great story. He founded this community in Cincinnati. It was called the New Jerusalem community when he was young and on fire as a priest and he wanted to change the world. And he talks about how the marathon meeting about what is going to be the goal and the mission of the New Jerusalem and what will be our vision statement and what will matter to us. And he said there was all these ideas and they couldn't come to any agreement and it was going on for hours and hours. And there was a 9 and the 9s will just sit there. We have 9s in our family, by the way. They'll just sit there and listen and they won't say a word and they'll laugh. But when they laugh, it'll be really mild. Someone will tell a great joke and they'll go, and that's like as much as you'll get out of them. So they'll just sit there all placid and quiet, observing. And he says, finally, they couldn't agree. He looks at this 9. He's like, hey, what do you think? And this guy says, I think the New Jerusalem should be the kind of community that doesn't need to be important. And he said, as soon as the guy said it, everybody was like, what are we fighting about? That's exactly right. So they just have this like natural way of harmonizing rooms, bringing people together, bringing peace into a space. But again, they're pretty low energy. They're not gonna roar with laughter. They're not gonna get animated when they tell stories. In fact, they're not gonna tell stories. You have to like suck stories out of them. When you one-on-one conversations with 9s, so the 5 will like keep demanding information. The 9 will just be perfectly happy to just sit there and quiet. Like it's just stillness and which can be uncomfortable if you don't know each other. So with 9s, you sort of feel like compelled to carry the conversation. And sometimes you can find yourself just grasping at straws because they won't hardly give anything back because they're like, well, in fact, I've counseled with a 9. She came in and I remember she was having a faith crisis. She's like, hey, I've got all these doubts. And she's explaining to me and we're talking through them. And she kept pausing. And she kept saying, she'd say, wait, why are you talking to me right now? And I said, what do you mean? She said, no, why are you giving me your time? Like, I'm not important enough for you to talk to me. She's like, why are you giving me your time? And she couldn't convince herself that she was important enough She's like, she wouldn't even finish her questions. I'd be like, well, what are your questions? She'd be like, well, I was reading in the Old Testament and I read, and do you really want to talk about this? Like, you have so many more important things to deal with. I'm just going to go. I'm going to go. And I was like, you're here. Will you please finish your question? Can we please talk about it? And I had to beg her to set up a follow-up appointment. I was like, hey, we need to talk again. She's like, no, I can't. There's so many bigger issues right now. I can't take your time. So they're really deferential. They don't want to take your time. They just can't believe that they have anything to say that you want to hear. You have to know that about a 9. They just don't believe they have anything to say that you want to hear. The other thing you have to know about a 9, you can convince them to do anything, so don't. Like, you can drag a 9 along on anything. 3s could so easily create an army of 9s. You'd lose every war because they have no energy. But you could get them, you'd get a spear in their hands. And the 9s often say this. Before they know what even happened, they've found themselves in places doing things that they don't want to do, with people they don't want to be with. But they just have no oppositional energy to them. So it's like, hey, we should go out on the boat and go water skiing. Okay. They don't even like to water ski. You should get on the skis and water ski. They don't like to water ski. The next thing you know, they're being pulled behind a boat. Hey, you should try body surfing behind the boat. Just like let yourself be pulled by the rope. We'll take a video. Okay. But at some point, they do say at some point this stuff builds. Like these 9s just get so exploited because they just don't have no. They just don't say no. They just don't have any oppositional energy, that eventually they do get angry. Like eventually they explode, but it's rare. And when it happens, everybody's shocked because they're like, whoa, this person. And you know, if a 9 gets angry, you've done something really bad because they never get angry. The other thing they say about 9s is, okay, so the fundamental need of the 9 is peace. The cardinal sin is slothfulness. But it's not laziness. It's just, think of a sloth. It's low energy. It's like they're not going to move fast. In fact, they even talk about like with 9s, it can be really hard to motivate them. Like everybody knows this person. We're getting ready for the trip. Hey, everybody, we're leaving at 8:30 sharp. We got a long trip in front of us. Let's get the car loaded. And at 8:45, somebody's still eating breakfast and hasn't taken a shower yet. It's probably the 9. Right? It's just getting them moving can be hard. They have that kind of just slow energy to them. But it's not oppositional. It's not angry. It's not aggressive. So these are the 9s. That's an hour and a half. You've been incredibly patient and generous. Are there any final questions about Enneagram?
Do you usually, like when you meet people, like how often can you pick it up what number they are, or like do you find yourself like thinking and analyzing it a lot?
Okay, that's it. I'm so glad you asked that question. I think for pastors and therapists, it's easier to pick up energy because people are more open. When people come into a pastor's office or a therapy office, they're going to open up their heart. I always like to say it this way. Every person has a certain number of hidden rooms inside their soul, and then you sort of selectively choose who you're going to show those rooms to. Pastors and therapists get to see all the rooms. People don't hide any rooms from pastors and therapists. Once you see everybody's rooms, you can pick up on it pretty fast. But I actually think it's pretty hard to type people if they're not opening up their rooms. Like I said, the 7 energy is pretty obvious. 8 energy is pretty obvious. 5 energy can be obvious. So you kind of pick up, and I want to repeat, it's not attributes. It's energy. It's in the eyes. It's in the soul. You can start to pick up, but you want to be careful. Like, more likely you're going to mistype people. You really have to live with them or spend a lot of time with them to pick up on the energy. And even then you might be wrong. It's always best to share the Enneagram and let them self-type. That's always best. But you'll pick up on it, especially when you live with people. You'll pick up on it. Yeah. Yeah, my closing thoughts are this. A few main points. The Enneagram, again, is not about attributes. It's about energy. Once you pick up on the energy, it becomes super clear with a person. Another important point, the Enneagram is not primarily about you understanding other people. It's about you understanding how your own gifts destroy you. So as a 3, I have had to come to terms with the fact that I do have some charisms, if I can say it that way. I can stand up in front of an audience and I can be charismatic. I can rally a football team to play hard. I could have been a good general in war. I know I can stand up in front of people and I can conjure up some oratory magic to get people to do what I want them to do. But that desire to have a fan club is really toxic for a soul. And it has caused me to mistreat people. I can be deceptive. I can play around the edges of truth. There are people that would say I've used them in the past. That's really painful. So one of the primary benefits of the Enneagram is to be able to look in the mirror and say, okay, I have gifts, and they are gifts. They are charisms. But how are they hurting me? And can I be a little bit more thoughtful about that? That's the primary value of the Enneagram. And I like how Rohr says it. It's hard to see those sins because your gifts have gotten you to where you are right now. So you don't want to look in the mirror and see your gifts as impediments, but you might be able to catch it out of the corner of your eye, and that's what the Enneagram helps you do. But the other value that's secondary is I really do think it can save relationships. I've seen this with people in this group, and I hope it's okay for me to say it, but like a 7-1 relationship. The 7 wants fun and adventure. The 1 has the superpower to see what needs to be fixed. But when the 1 wants to sit down and talk through what's broken, that just feels like negative energy to the 7. And then the 7 doesn't want to sit in that space. And then the 1 gets frustrated that they don't want to sit in that space. And they feel like the 7 might not be committed to the relationship. Well, if they don't know that about themselves, that relationship might be doomed. But if they can name it, if the 1 can say, hey, I'm probably a little bit prone to criticism, and I'm probably a little bit prone to like focusing too much on what's wrong. And if the 7 can say, yeah, and I'm probably not super comfortable in negative spaces and conversations, just being able to name that can get you to a better place in the relationship. So I do think it can help you in relationships, and it can especially help you in ministering to other people and meeting their needs. And the other thing, and again, we're just trying to see each other deeply, right? We're trying to discern spirits. It can keep you from manipulating people. I know if I look at the 2 in the circle and I say, I need you to do this, I've struck the chord inside her, that most tender chord. I got to be really careful about that, right? That's a power I hold in my hand that I've got to hold really sacred. And I think if you understand that about people, you can be sensitive and sacred in the way that you interact with them. So with that, let's call that good on Enneagram.